baby belly.
The baby belly. There's the baby.
Oh.
And then we get her a bit older here. She's getting bigger.
Yeah.
That's with
You're
my
not going to be able to
sister.
carry her for much longer.
No.
Oh, they grow fast, huh?
Yeah.
There,
Aww.
this was the cutest when I got her. Oh, sorry, where'd it go? There's
Oh, the
pretty
face.
She was exhausted. I took her to Kensington Market and she was just wiped out.
Tired puppies are good puppies.
That's my niece. There she is biting my niece. Baby in the basket. Pretty face.
Aww.
Oh. Sorry, that's different. First time on the couch.
Good
That
for her.
girl.
Aw, she's lovely.
First time to the pet store, got a scarf. Pretty girl in this.
She is.
This
Oh,
was the
that's
cutest.
very
She
pretty.
dragged
In the
her-
sunstream.
She dragged her bed
Into
to
the
door.
sunstream.
Yeah.
My dog's, my one dog in particular, the medieval terrier, she loves, I call her a lizard. She likes to lie outside in the hottest day of the year and find the sunniest spot to lie in. So if she's in the house, she'll see where the sun is streaming and she will do that, just that. She will move her bed into the sunstream so she can lie in it. Yeah.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
There she is in the car. Not
Good
sure about
girl.
the car.
Really?
Trying to get out of the cage. Here, we found her a friend.
Yay.
So she plays with Charlie.
That's good.
She's way better dog when she's with Charlie. So that's the dog walker I found.
Excellent.
He's good with her.
Maybe get your own dog, you know, it'd be better.
Yeah, she's going to be a guide dog, right? So when we take her out, she has to wear this.
Yeah.
I have to go back and get a bigger size. So look, she's like
Yeah,
a
it's sausage. Oh, that's awesome.
And there's the pretty face.
She's gorgeous.
Yeah, she's a good-looking girl. So that's my life.
Yeah. They do become that.
Here I can't get a good picture of her on the front. So. It doesn't look very good, does it? I'll have to figure out how to do that.
Oh.
Do you have yours on your home screen?
No.
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 Maybe it just doesn't work well.
You have an iPhone though, right?
Yeah.
I have a Samsung.
Yesterday my dad turned 90.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty big celebration. Look, I got it on there.
Oh, cool. Nice. I like that.
The baby. So was anybody with him for the celebration?
I don't know what he did. I just left a message for him. I left on the card.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the academic procession and the Chancellor.
I declare that the 557th Convocation of McMaster University for the conferring of degrees is now in session.
Please be seated. Good morning. I am Dr. David Wilkinson, Provost and Vice President Academic of the University. This morning I have the great pleasure of acting as your Master of Ceremonies and welcoming you, graduands and guests, to this Convocation ceremony. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge some of the notable leaders that are joining me on the stage today. Dr. Suzanne Labarge, our Chancellor, Dr. Patrick Dean, President and Vice Chancellor, Mr. Roger Coldry, Vice President Academic, Mr. Sean Van Cunit, Associate Vice President, Students and Learning and Dean of Students, Ms. Andrea Farquhar, Assistant Vice President, Office of Public and Government Relations, Dr. Bruce Milliken, Acting Dean of the Faculty of Science, Dean Emeritus Donald Sprung, Associate Deans, Directors, Chairs, faculty members, and honored guests. Before we start our formal program, may I first ask everyone in the hall to switch off any device that may ring or beep during the ceremony. I would now like to call upon our Chancellor, Dr. Suzanne Labarge, to make her own welcoming remarks.
Welcome, honored guests, staff, faculty, families, friends, and most importantly, graduands. This is an exciting day for all of you who are graduating today, as well as for all those people who have supported you and stood behind you, and in many cases have had a key role in you being here today. You have achieved a great deal to get here, and you should all be very proud of your success and looking forward to what the future might bring. Congratulations, and enjoy the ceremony.
I would like to welcome Dr. Patrick Dean, President and Vice Chancellor, to the podium, who will be presenting the honorary degree recipient.
Chancellor Labarge, by the authority of the Senate of McMaster University, I have the honor to present Martin Manning. Since earning his PhD in theoretical physics from McMaster University in 1967, Dr. Martin Manning has been working hard to save the world. For nearly 3 decades, he was a scientist at the Institute of Nuclear Sciences with the New Zealand Department of Scientific and Industrial Research. There, he worked as a theoretical physicist, taking a year to visit McMaster as an assistant professor in the Department of Physics, then the leader of greenhouse gas research, and finally, the head of radiocarbon and environmental research. It was his transition from theoretical physics to environmental research in 1979, a time long before climate change was a well-known global issue, that defined Dr. Manning's professional legacy. Since that transition, he has worked as a consultant to the World Meteorological Organization in Switzerland, as a visiting scientist with the Max Planck Institute for Chemistry in Germany, and as a research associate at the University of Colorado NOAA Climate Monitoring Diagnostics Laboratory. Focusing his research on greenhouse gases and atmospheric chemistry, Dr. Manning led investigations at the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research, a New Zealand Crown Institute, exploring atmospheric chemistry and the carbon cycle. Beginning in 2007, he was a professor of climate change at Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, where he established the New Zealand Climate Change Research Institute to build better interactions among science, policy, and societal factors on climate change issues. He is now retired, but maintains his strong affiliation with the institute he founded. From 2002 to 2007, Dr. Manning represented New Zealand on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. He spent 5 years in Colorado as director of the IPCC Working Group 1 Technical Support Unit that produced the fourth assessment report on climate change for governments, leading up to the IPCC being awarded, along with Al Gore, the 2007 Nobel Peace Prize. Dr. Manning has been a member of the Scientific Steering Committee for the International Global Atmospheric Chemistry Project, a co-convener of the International Geosphere-Biosphere Program's Global Analysis, Interpretation, and Modeling Methane Synthesis Project, and a member of the World Meteorological Organization's Working Group on Environmental Pollution and Atmospheric Chemistry. An officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit, Dr. Manning has received the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research Prestige Study Award, the Geophysical Research Editors Award, and the Oceanic and Atmospheric Research Outstanding Paper Award. Chancellor Labarge, I have the privilege of presenting to you a member of the McMaster alumni family and a central and influential figure in the science of climate change. In recognition of his accomplishments and contributions, I ask that you confer upon Dr. Martin Manning the degree Doctor of Science, honoris causa.
Martin Manning, by the authority of McMaster University Senate, I have the great pleasure to confer upon you the degree Doctor of Science, honoris causa, in McMaster University with all the rights and privileges pertaining to that degree. Congratulations. I'll get you to sign over here. I would now like to invite Dr. Manning to deliver the convocation address.
Thank you very much, Madam President, Vice Chancellor, all the distinguished guests up here, and my congratulations to all of you graduates today. I think this is a very important day for all of us. And of course, to those of you who've come to celebrate what they've achieved. This is important. I want to really say how grateful I am to receive this recognition from the university where I did my PhD. I'm really privileged to have been singled out because I'm sure there are very many other candidates that this university would have as well. But also, I guess climate change is a growing issue and growing recognition that we need to do more about it. For the 5 years that I was managing the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and then we won the Nobel Peace Prize, that was great. But being here today is somehow greater. I want to say that because this is the place that turned me into a scientist. And deeply rooted in my memory is going to lectures by Professor Mel Preston and learning about the physics of the nucleus. Now, I thought I was pretty smart when I arrived here because I already had 2 degrees, but they were in mathematics. And when you go into the real world of science, you suddenly discover the problems are much deeper, and you have to learn a lot more. There were times when I didn't quite understand one of Professor Preston's lectures, and so I'd have to take a break. And I'd wander up to the library. This was back in the good old days, and you didn't just read journals on a computer screen. And I would browse around the shelves, and I discovered something called the Journal of Irreproducible Results. And it takes a minute when you first see it, and then you realize it is hilarious. It is all comedy, really funny. So you read these funny stories about linkages between things that seem to be totally disconnected. And then you hear about something that might just happen again in 2,000 years' time, but we're not sure. So you have a good laugh, and then I go back to reading the textbook by Professor Preston and going back to the real science, as I thought in those days. My PhD was based on doing computer programs in what was a great computer at the time, but now my cell phone here has got probably more computing power. These are how things are changing. The thesis was based on this thing where you treat all the neutrons and protons as being fermions. They have to be in their own state, and nothing else is allowed with them. And the funny thing was that as soon as a number grows up, collective properties of these things, even though they're very individualistic, if you like, the collective properties become more important. So I knew my Hartree-Fock calculations weren't going to cover very much. But nevertheless, I finished my computer program, got a degree, shot off to Oxford, spent a year there and learnt quite a lot more from some other experts there. And then I went back to New Zealand, and there were several reasons for that. One of them was another person who has molded my career, and that's Dr. Athol Rafter. He was one of 3 nuclear physicists, so again, I'm still in nuclear physics, who pioneered development of radiocarbon dating, working out how old something is. And what he found was that the carbon in the atmosphere was getting older every year. And he realized that a Nobel Prize winner, Svante Arrhenius, way back at the end of the 19th century, who'd predicted how much the global temperature could go up if we add carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, Arrhenius had been wrong about one fundamental thing, because he thought it would take 3,000 years. It must be happening much faster. So we saw nuclear physics suddenly open up a new door. When Rafter discovered this, his colleagues in the University of California, San Diego, suddenly worked out why Arrhenius had been wrong. Carbon dioxide doesn't just all get soaked up in the oceans. We have a problem. And I'm quoting now from a paper they wrote in 1957, and it says, "We are now carrying out a large-scale geophysical experiment of a kind that could not have happened in the past, nor be reproduced in the future. Remember the Journal of Irreproducible Results." That's where we are. Well, Dave Keeling at that university started up the first accurate measurements of CO2. That now is a big issue. We're doing it all over the world. We know CO2 has now gone above 400 parts per million in the atmosphere. It's back where it was 2 million years ago. Remember what I said about irreproducible experiments. This is what we're dealing with. My group in New Zealand pioneered the use of accelerator mass spectrometry, just to make the point that I'm still in nuclear physics. But we pioneered the use of that to measure what was happening with methane in the atmosphere and then carbon monoxide. We were now dealing with something like 5 molecules per cubic centimeter. Amazing precision we can get from the technology. In 2009, 2 years after, I'm jumping ahead now, 2 years after we won that Nobel Peace Prize, 2 scientists working for the International Institute for Sustainable Development, which is based here in Canada, put out a report saying that they could see the drought that was hitting an area called the Levant, made up of Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, Palestine. Prolonged drought led to a collapse of the rural communities, migration into the cities, lack of employment, social destabilization. They suggested in 2009 it could even lead to war. When I read that, I wondered. 2011, the war broke out in Syria. We know that it's escalated into something much more than they expected. And 2 months ago, a paper came out in a top science journal saying the drought there seems unprecedented now for 900 years. That's about as far back as the paleoclimate records can go reliably. This is the world we're dealing with. It's unrepeatable. When I did my, again, I guess the key reason that the impact of the drought in Syria was not initially recognize the seriousness of it was a lack of recognition of the collective responses, how that would flow on into Europe and other parts of the world. So we really have to understand the collective behavior in our systems much better than we do. Just like my Hartree-Fock theory was not good enough really to treat a nucleus properly. What we're finding now is the collective behavior in complex systems is a key issue. The challenge is now to develop a sustainable future. And it really is more of a challenge, I think, than a lot of people recognize. And the key thing now is that some futures actually need to be avoided, totally. We don't just even want to do some of these experiments once. We keep asking ourselves what would happen if we double the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. We should never know the answer. It's better for science to back off from ever wanting to know some of these things. And I think that is what's now new in this century. We're going beyond irreproducible experiments to experiments that must be avoided. And I think this will become a much broader issue during this century. So to those of you who are graduating here, I think that this is something to keep in mind. The science that I learned here from Professors Mel Preston and Donald Sprung, who's with us, was about the real depth of scientific understanding. That depth is there. We don't have to test it for everything. We need to really learn how to communicate with how to communicate with society much more broadly to ensure that we have a safer planet to live on for all time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manning. It's always a pleasure to be able to recognize an alumnus who has used his knowledge acquired here to make a profound difference to the world around us, and we thank him very much for that.
Dr. Patrick Dean will now come forward to present the graduands to the Chancellor for admission to their degrees.
Will the graduands please stand? Madam Chancellor, on behalf of McMaster University Senate, I present to you these candidates in order that you may confer the appropriate degrees upon them, and I bear witness that they are worthy and suitable. May I also request that you confer the appropriate degrees in absentia upon all those candidates who have successfully completed the required course of study, but who are not present.
Graduands, by my authority and that of the McMaster University Senate, I have the great pleasure to admit those before me today and those in absentia to their individual degrees in McMaster University with all of the rights and privileges pertaining to those degrees. My sincere congratulations to you all. Please be seated.
Graduates, I now ask each of you to join me on stage so that the Chancellor and I may welcome you to the McMaster community of scholars.
Ladies and gentlemen, so that each graduate's name may be heard, it would be appreciated if during the presentation of the graduands you hold your collective applause to the end of each degree category. Thank you. Madam Chancellor, may I present to you the following graduates of the degree Doctor of Philosophy. Devika Sharanya Parayur Premkumar. Sarah Beatty. Sophie Joannis. Nicholas Joseph Ladelfa. Lindsay Elizabeth Farber. Alice Rosa. William Simpson. Nicole Ashley Folland. Madam Chancellor, may I present to you the following graduates of the degree Master of Science. Sheridan James Cheston Baker. Pardis Hagigi. Maria Pazevsky. Julia Rutledge. Samantha Grace Emke. Alexander Bauer Kuntz. Rebecca Eisen. Charisse McLaughlin. Melissa Patok.
Madam Chancellor, may I present to you the following graduates of the degree Bachelor of Science Honours. Husson Abbas. Nada Ahmed. Rashik Tanvir Ahmed. Deborah Anu Oluwapo Temitope Aina. Michnia Alb. Adil Ali. Adam Alitz. Nicholas Allen. Seema Al-Najjar. Jason G. Seop An. Julian Andre. Catherine Elizabeth Andrushko. Aaron Armenian. Lucas Anthony Assis. Jordan Atkins. Charlotte Au Yeung. Ali Babar. Nicole Erica Barbin. Robert Alexander Ballach. Rachel Elizabeth Ballast. Sharish Bashir. Julian Bastone. Sarah Marie Batiste. Megan Candice Beck. Chantal Bélanger. Sarah Isabel Benedict. Asta Badwai. Kevin Tariq Botcha. James Roy Bolton. Michael Jacob Boret. Shirley Botrosh. Suzanne Borsali. Justin Patrick Boyle. Samantha Michelle Bolger. Daniel Mario Cadet. Catherine Rui Tsao. Kathleen Diem Juan Caudizon. Sarah Asunta Capitola. Kimberly June Carlton. Jacqueline Chan. Janet Chan. Anna Helmetsky. Andy Chen. Cheng Cheng Chen. Michael Kai Chen. Cassandra Churka Cheng Chung. Esther Yi Hua Chiang. Angel Hiu Sun Chien. Austin Chu. Chirayu Rajendra Chokshi. Jacqueline Chow. Rayon Chowdhury. Douglas Cho Yan Chung. Mei Lin Chung Chum Lan. Rebecca Ann Clark. Miranda Vivian Clayton. Savannah Colomeko. David Allen Crisanti. Julissa Lily Cummins. Natasha Nicole Sipples. Tyler William Chanietsky. Nicole Monica Kuna. Brunel de Souza. Nina Dabic. Stella Danai. Linda Le Dow. Jonathan Davis. Thelini Nwanga Delunga Hawata. Robert Taylor Derrick. Shahzad Desfoulian. Ravina Dami. Manvir Singh Dillon. Gillian Lerner Diamond. Cara McHenry Di Giovanni. Sally Thi Ding. Aaron David Edward. Salsan Eldarat. Alexander Grant Eric Elliott. Jeff Adam Richard Emmanuel. Carlene Olivia Falk. Golara Fahumand. Patrick Fedor. Stephanie Elizabeth Fyodorov. Sarah Josephine Fisher. Tamara Marie Fucciarelli. Alexander Furukawa. Kimberly Ann German. Hannah Gar Niyem. Douglas Michael Gleason. Caitlin Jennifer Gonzalez. Emma Paloma McKitterick Greenberg. Madeline Gritzin. Brandon Gutierrez. Yuki Hachitori. Apana Haldar. Amir Hamze. Isabel Ann Flavel Harrison. Erin Elizabeth Harvey. Sunya Hassan. Ashley Gloria Hatcher. Susan Hay. Nicholas Head. Kaylee Amanda Henning. Christine Huing. Chelsea Lee Jackson. Nadia Yagdat. Siola G. Peter Wesley Thomas Johnson. Taylor Page Johnson. Ankita Suryakant Kambli. Chris Maria Kaminsky. Bridge Karmoor. Samiksha Kao. Bhagwan Preet Kaur. Amber Kayed. Simone Kayer. Sabul Khalid. Ali Hoja. Alex Geon Young Kim. Gi Chun Kim. Jin Sol Kim. Calvin Jin Hyuk Kim. Myung Kyu Kim. Matthew Aaron Klein. Christina Klobuchar. Shanpreet Kaur Kuna. Leah Krisman. Anya Krivi Jansen. Madeline Catherine Kubiseski. Farah Kudus. Evelyn Kurowski. Jason Scott Lamb. Abigail Lee. Claudia Carey Lee. Cynthia Elizabeth Sherman Lee. Julian Alexander Lagar. Karen Nicole Legg. Joyce M. Lee. Grace Clara Liang. Jasmine Chia Min Liu. Franz Martin Tumayluan Lopez. Juan Manuel Lopez Tiboni. Lisa Marie Lawrence. Kristen Michelle Lucibello. Anchi Luo. Vivian Lee. Suleiman Aslan Lyons. Hoi Fung Ma. Justin Alexander McKinnon. Malvin Mack. Humna Malik. Liana Mantella. Catherine Carla Marino. Kobe Martin. Bog Singh Marwe. Vista Mavandadi. Tanis Sarah McCarthy. Arthur James Francis McConville. Amy Lewis McInnes. Cecilia McLaughlin. Jonathan McLeod. Clarissa Jane McNamara. Tatiana Medakovic. Nicholas Anti Medeiros. Ruxana Haq Merkant. Olivia Ann Merritt. Jamie Lynn Meunier. Megan Alexandra Michelli. Peter Ihab Fai Mikhail. Arpa Modi. Liban Ahmed Mohammed. Anthony Mock. Brandon Joseph Murphy. Asil Musle. Joseph Musa. Thasika Nadisa Pillai. Anjani Naidu. Claude Nassé. Michael Benjamin Navis. Maya Yona Newman. Andrew Nguyen. Diana T. Nguyen. Kathy Nguyen. Maria Nguyen. Jenny Nee. Artemi Nakitin. Paige O'Neill. Ade Toriola Odetunde. Olusea Kolapo Oduyale. Michelle Agrodnik. Stephen Oliver. Shirley Ong. Christopher Thomas Robert Ostick. Nicole Pachal. Alisa Papadopoulos. Anna Tom Paratskal. Hiral Patel. Krushangi Sanjay Patel. Brendan Scott Patterson. Mamoon Patwari. Sheldon Keith Pereira. Thomas Michael Pfaff. Rohan Philip. Diana Irina Pogachen. Mark Austin Pollock. Raganya Ponman Ede Yil. Kira Jessica Posterski. Ashley Elena Postumus. Lucy Alice Poston. Jennifer Power. Tynan Aras Pringle. Theodora Purpa. Sabitha Rajaruban. Elizabeth Ramirez. Donovan Ramkishun. Michael Robert Marshall Ranieri. Sabih Rashid. Lindsay Grace Ann Rayner. Vanessa Reali. Lauren Barbara Rice. Nicole Marie Revy. Lauren Marjorie Marina Ribeiro. Elise Chantal Rabichaud. Matthew William Robbins. Lorenzo Miguel Rosas. Eric Stephen Roth. Sarah Breton Rudaham. Nathan Elliott Rutherford. Matthew William Rutledge. Nicholas Alexander Reiter. Pakazi Sadat. Akshita Sahi. Victoria Sakharova. Joseph Charles Salter. Taranvir Sandhu. Anujan Sadgunalingam. Sahil Saunani. Sebastian Luca Valerio Schiara. Alexander Shioni. Irina Simonchukova. Damien Conrad Sharpley. Selvia Shehata. Ashish Shrestha. Treten Simon. Ariana Cristini Simoni. Peter Michael Shimovich. Priyanka Shivaraja. Daniel Elizabeth Jacqueline Smith. Mary Beth Smoten. Krishna Srinivasan. Kaushik Sripada. Keaton Strongman. Brendan Michael Sudbury. Danielle Louise Sullivan. Abira Surendran. Dana Swarbrick. Arthur Alexander Shibalski. Usama Tahir. Clara Ga Yun Tam. Stephanie Tan. Jennifer Tang. Tyson Tang. Jareen Tasneem. Patrick Tay. Ruth Hapte Aptekle Mariam. Ajay Kumar Thakar. Erin Tong. Lee Sherilyn Acevedo Totola. Christopher Charles Tracy. William Tsang. Serena Tsi. Hillman Vanessa Tsui. Claudia Victoria Turco. Annika van Kessel. Darina Van. Nicholas Vecchi. Josephine Sabrina Vestio. Jessica Vu. Laura Noreen Grace Waddle. Deanne Tak Onwa. Zachary David Waller. Michael Justin Wan. Sheila Wang. Weishi Wang. Joella Wang. Liana Watt. Dilaka Welapili. Catherine Lorraine West. Shehani Nimisha Wikramar Singha. Ivona Vidurska. Monica Anna Verchigroch. Michelle Margaret Wilhelm. Whitney Wilson. Emily Ann Winters. Jennifer Julia Wisniewski. Erin Kin Keng Wong. Jesselyn Joy Wong. Samantha Wong. Brian Wu. Zili Xie. Xiaobai Xu. Kirby Doi Wa Ye. Victoria Zabigailo. Athena Zambelis. Haichou Zhang. Menyu Zheng. Chanwen Zhao. Ravin Lee Zitaruk Mancini. John Babitinka. Ledor Babitinka. Madam Chancellor, may I present to you the following graduates of the degree Bachelor of Science Kinesiology Honours. Kevin Alenick. Riley Allison. Amna Ansari. Mario Atukovic. David Aziz. Jessica Heather Baglow. Pradeep Singh Bains. Jacqueline Baker. Adrian Christopher Bardati. Derek Matthew Bennett. Tonya Bogal. Christina Bianchi. Aisha Bibi Isan. Zachary David Burke. Evangelos Angelo Bistas. Stephen Bonk. Adrienne Elena Cascioli. Tiffany Chung. Nikita Chabra. Karen Wing Ki Chu. Yu Hoi Choi. Juliana Catherine Coito. Nadia Colaveco. Christine Elise Conciatori. Ryan Kumba. René Coquereau. Jamie Cote. Erica Coulson. Bianca D'Alessandro. Danielle Madeleine Delat. Jenna Delangelo. Nicole Christine Drake. Crystal Dundas. Elizabeth Edgley. Nicole Ellis. Mena Faiz. Rachel Feast. Melanie Fong. Yukino Ann Fukushima. Jennifer May Gemmell. Emily Elizabeth Giroux. Christopher Gonsowski. Riley Lynn Goodhand Fulcher. Karolina Grzekalowski. Lisa Guidoni. Karim Khaled Hassanein. Brett James Helly. Ellie Daniel Hetz. Melissa Hill. Paulina Pui Ying Ho. Caitlin Marguerite May Holbrook. Stephen James Holobeshin. Amanda Christie Honcrook. Annette Hirishko. Nicole Jacoba Henson Hughes. Abby Hannah Hurd. Megan Elizabeth James. Paula Alexandra Yescu. Praitik Jingan. Matthew Johnston. Brooke Rebecca Jones. Elaine Can. Nadine Kexel. Raymond Carnano. Annie Coe. Marie Court. Alok Kumar. Nirsan Kunaratnam. Wesley Yue Hin Kwok. Catherine Laycock. Shelby Lamb. Caitlin Leung. Kieran Nicole Ariel Aishi Liu. Ming Hang Liu. Mitchell Bruce Locke. Cora Loblin. Mira Shaheen Mahmood. Melissa Martino. Sydney Subo Massey. Madeline McDonald. Stephanie Nancy McEnany. Kristen McFadden. Melissa Brittany McNally. Ivan Meisinger. John David William Middleton. Lukshan Nantha Kumar. Chloe Ng. Sean Ng. Patricia Nguyen. Emily Lynn Oddy. Brandon Paisana. Kyle William Palfreman. Stephanie Park. Matthew Anton Pavlovich. Kathleen Jane Porter. Rachel Posesorski. Julian Christian Qualia. Hannah May Reguin. Donika Rashica. Joanne Rego. Karin Morgan Richards. Emily Page Ricketts. Erica Rizzolo. Srikesh Rudra Patna. Nelson Ian Sadler. Alexander Salvatore. Saif Sama An. Ethan Benami Saunders. Sarah Elizabeth Santosh. Mitchell Joseph Savoy. Alexandra Bianca Scadamaglia. Lisa Ashley Skrase. Daniel David Cedran. Laraib Serrish. Abirami Shan Muga Ratnam. Khadia Siddiqui. Vincent Joseph Siriani. Naveen Siva Ranjan. Olivia So. Aya Soliman. Taylor Marie Sanoyev. Ashley Erin Stenzel. Tanner Stokes. Anne Catherine Stotesbury. Nicola Jordan Tertz. Lauren Natasha Tessolin. Grace Catherine Thomas. Shruti Rachel Thomas. Jessica Tsang. Amy Elizabeth Urquhart. Luke Warren Nicholas van der Heijden. Mark Vrabensky. Mario Wadi. Michael Wadi. Emily Caitlin Wilson. Fiona Wilson. Taylor Lynn Wilson. Kestrel Nicole Woodley. Olivia Tony Wooders. Madiha Salim Winne. Jin Lee Xiong. Amanda Jacqueline Yi. Michael James Jofido. Caitlin Elizabeth Zavitz. Holly Lucia Zita. Madam Chancellor, may I present to you the following graduates of the degree Bachelor of Science. Emily Margaret Irene Cameron. Paolo Galazza. Chao Shu Gong. Heidi Lynn Henderson. Patrick John Mackenzie Hughes. Hyun Jung Kim. Aaron Michael Meisner. Samantha Ann Muir. Adrian Shin Han Pham. Elżbieta Maria Pirch. Madam Chancellor, may I present to you the following graduates of the degree Bachelor of Science Kinesiology. Mary Fahim. Devon Ho. Alexandra Ragonia. Sojourné Monifa San Vicente. Teresa Ziegler.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to introduce Mr. Adil Ali, a graduate of the degree Bachelor of Science Honours in Molecular Biology and Genetics, who will be delivering the valedictory address.
Chancellor Labarge, President Dean, McMaster faculty, honored guests, fellow alumni, family and friends, and last but not least, McMaster Science graduating class of 2016. I would like to start by saying good morning and welcome to everyone present here today. Dear fellow graduates, I want you to think back to your first day at McMaster. Kind of seems like yesterday, doesn't it? Do you remember looking at your schedule and being excited for your first 8:30 chemistry class? I mean, it's hard to believe. Now the only thing that could get us to wake up that early is a mandatory eye clicker that's worth participation marks. Or a morning convocation ceremony. Do you remember picking out your nicest clothes, spending an extra 5 minutes on your hair, and overall trying everything in your power to stand out and make an impression to your fellow classmates? But then all of your efforts of standing out being completely voided because one kid decided it'd be a good idea to wear their lab coat to lecture? Although these memories seem very close, the fact of the matter is, a lot of time has passed since our first days here at McMaster, and quite frankly, a lot has changed. We've made new friends, grown as individuals, and gained memories that will last us a lifetime. Also, we now have the tools and skill sets to debunk all the myths that were fed to us prior to our time here at McMaster. The myth we heard that in university, professors wouldn't be approachable. Here at McMaster, we have been so fortunate to have some of the kindest, most thoughtful, and friendly instructors. However, I remember being very confused when trying to contact Joe Kim in first year. Instead of studying, I spent a majority of the semester contemplating whether he actually existed or not. The myth that all first years gain 15 pounds, also known as the notorious freshman 15. Speaking on behalf of everyone, most of us have experienced this to be false. We gain 15 pounds not only in first year, but in every subsequent year to follow. And of course, my personal favorite, university students are broke and sleep-deprived zombies. Okay, maybe that one's true. All right, enough of the jokes now. Now that we're graduating, it's time to get a little more serious. And with that, I would like to share with you a piece of advice. My advice is, now that you're scientists, is to go through life trying to think like a scientist. Science isn't only about facts that you learn in school, it's a habit of mind, an approach to dealing with the world. In a few years from now, No one's going to remember how to solve that one organic synthesis problem or what that constant for that ridiculously long equation was. The most important thing science has taught us is to look at things and ask ourselves, I wonder why that happened. Science is a process of figuring out how the world works. You see something interesting, come up with an idea of why that might happen, and test your idea to see if you're right. You repeat this process until you figure out why things happen the way they do, and then you use that knowledge to explain new things or to do things that you couldn't do before. So when I tell you to think like a scientist, what I'm saying is to use that process, which is something we've all been equipped with here at McMaster. Pay attention to the world around you, even the little details. Ask questions to yourself and to those around you. Look for real answers. Don't accept that's just the way things are. Push a little and find the real reasons to why things are the way they are. And when you find those answers, use them to better yourself and the world around you. From first year faculty night to formaldehyde in fourth year, we have all experienced our own personal adversities. Whether it was finishing that 11:59 p.m. assignment, trying to differentiate between Kenneth Taylor Hall and Togo Salmon Hall, or figuring out whether it is merely a coincidence that Patrick Dean's last name is Dean. However, the fact that you are here today should be enough evidence to convince you that you can overcome any challenge if you put your mind to it. So wherever the journey of life takes us, remember, work hard and use the skills that we gained to make a great impression on others. Be that person who inspires change to those around you. And before I conclude, I'd like to apologize in advance if anyone here actually wore their lab coats on the first day of class. Congratulations and thank you. We made it.
Thank you, Adil. May I now call upon the Acting Dean of Science, Dr. Bruce Milliken, who will present the Governor-General's Academic Medal and the Jensen Medal.
Madam Chancellor, McMaster University has been granted 2 academic silver medals by the Governor-General. This medal is awarded annually to the undergraduate student graduating with the highest academic standing. This year, Haichao Zhang is one of 2 recipients of the Governor-General's Academic Medal. I ask that you and all those present join me to express recognition of her achievement. I would now like to present the Jensen Medal, which is awarded to a student for demonstrating outstanding academic achievements in biology and pharmacology. It is with great pleasure that I announce that this year's winner is Sheldon Pereira.
Congratulations to Haichao and Sheldon. May I introduce Dr. Jennifer Mitten from the McMaster Alumni Association, who will now deliver the Alumni Association address.
Chancellor Labarge, President Dean, McMaster faculty, fellow alumni, honored guests, and especially members of the McMaster class of 2016. The first time we did this, it was 122 years ago, and there were 16 of you. The events of commencement, as Convocation was known then, were a little different from today's ceremony. In 1894, McMaster's first convocation included a sermon, the reading of graduate theses, yes, they read them aloud, word for word, and the conferring of 60 honorary degrees. The black graduation gowns back then were made of alpaca and lined with white satinette for the arts grads, and lavender for the graduates from theology. One of the graduates wearing alpaca that day was a young woman named Elizabeth Wells. She later published a description of the ceremony in Canadian Magazine. In that article, she wrote of McMaster's first convocation. The enthusiasm shown by the students who sat massed in the body of the large assembly showed plainly that they were filled with the spirit of loyalty to their university. Now, I'm not sure if 16 people in alpaca gowns counts as a mass, but the feelings of enthusiasm and pride were likely valid observations. I hope you have similar feelings today. I know I did when I graduated from McMaster in 1999 and again in 2007. Today, our university is very different from McMaster Elizabeth Wells knew 122 years ago, and our institutional history and credentials are far more robust. Today, I hope that your McMaster has earned your enthusiasm and loyalty through its service, excellence, and leadership and accomplishment, just as you have worked hard to earn our pride in you and our loyalty to you as you become the newest members of the McMaster alumni family. The McMaster Alumni Association's goal is to take your connection to McMaster beyond the feelings that are so strong today and help make it a lifeline commitment. In your lives as the alumni, the association will work to keep you connected. You will receive the McMaster Times Alumni Magazine, the e-newsletter Maroon Mail, and you can be part of the association's communities on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram. As new grads, you can sample activities and opportunities from our Mac 10 program, a series of events and services including social activities, career assistance, and online and in-person networking. We've also added a mentoring program that gives you access to the wisdom of hundreds of fellow Mac grads through a searchable database. Throughout your life, you can take advantage of value-added services like home, auto, and life insurance, mortgages, credit cards, and travel services. You can also join your fellow alumni at one of the hundreds of events we organize annually in Hamilton, across Canada, and around the world. There's much more information at alumni.mcmaster.ca and in the convocation booklet with your first McMaster Times. All you really need to know for now, however, is that McMaster Alumni Association and the Mac alumni family can be part of your Mac experience in a big way or a small way anytime you'd like. When you're ready, the McMaster Alumni Association will be too. One last thing, the Alumni Association is running a contest to help you spread your wings after graduation. We're giving away a $1,000 travel voucher and a host of other swag and tickets. Just go to the alumnimcmaster.ca website to find the entry information. So to the class of 2016, I offer my most sincere congratulations on your academic accomplishments, on your graduation, and on your first moments as members of the McMaster alumni family. You should be extremely proud of your accomplishments. I certainly am. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer. May I invite Dr. Dean back to the podium to deliver the President's address.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more speech to go before you're free to leave this hall and celebrate, and it's mine. It's a great privilege to be able to speak to you on this occasion. To acknowledge, too, that already from this podium today you've heard a great deal of very, very valuable advice and comment. I especially enjoyed our valedictorian Adil Ali's comments, especially the ones on my name. I wonder whether that isn't one of those unreproducible phenomena that Dr. Manning was talking about. What I particularly enjoyed about Adil's comments was his stress on the capacity that you all enjoy now as a result of your education in science here at McMaster to debunk myths And he's exactly right. You're empowered with perhaps the most potent tool with which to approach the world, both in terms of natural phenomena, but also social phenomena as well. Probing always, as a scientist must, beyond received wisdom and seeking to understand what it is you're looking at, what a phenomenon constitutes. This is all critically important. In fact, it's especially important when you bring that capacity to bear on society. It's a very significant fact that in our country at the moment, science is undergoing a major review in Ottawa. The role of a chief scientist has been restored to government, and we are in a very promising, we're on a very promising trajectory for science in this country after a period in which the practice of science has been very challenging. Now, Dr. Manning spoke very powerfully about the intersection between the science of climate change and social instability, particularly in his comments about the Middle East. And I thought I would talk about this intersection between education and society, in particular, wishing to underline something essential about the education you've all received, and about education in general. And that is that learning is a profoundly social activity. We learn by dialogue with others, whether that interaction is electronic, through the pages of a textbook, in a lab, whether the other party in the dialogue exists as a professor, a mentor, a classmate, or in some cases a character in a novel. Education is impossible outside of society, just as society is impossible without education. The American philosopher and education reformer, John Dewey, made this point more than a century ago, beginning with a simple declaration. I believe, he said, that the school is primarily a social institution. Dewey's progressive education movement held that education is not simply a social activity, but that it is also the agent of social reform. Dewey argued that the education system at that time in the United States failed to recognize the school as a form of community life. Instead, and this is what he wrote, it conceives the school as a place where certain information is to be given, where certain lessons are to be learned, or where certain habits are to be formed. The value of these is conceived as lying largely in the remote future. The student must do these things for the sake of something else he or she is to do. They are mere preparation. As a result, they do not become a part of life experience of the student, and so are not truly educative. Those are Dewey's words. So true education for John Dewey is not preparation for life, but it is life itself. It is the driver of human progress and the critical means by which society is made and continually remade. Dewey articulated this in 1897 in a document called My Pedagogic Creed, which is still relevant today. Universities continue to insist that their mandate is not simply to provide vocational training, but to educate citizens both in particular areas of expertise and more generally to shape society. So it is no coincidence that Dewey is heavily cited in a 2013 report to the European Commission, which seeks to reimagine post-secondary education on these kind of principles, and by so doing, contribute to Europe's social and economic renewal. Now, education may be a powerful agent of social reformation, but if it only reinforces an existing framework, this is Ardil's point, it becomes the enemy of progress and reform. 50 years of apartheid in South Africa was facilitated by a formidable police and military force inside the country, of course, but education was the real and most effective tool of oppression. And that's why the Soweto riots of 1976, which triggered the movement towards democracy in that country, started with school children protesting against an alien language of instruction. Now, here in Canada, the legacy of the residential school system has also proven how the power of education can be turned to destructive purposes, to advance the cultural hegemony and political control of one group over another. Society made homogeneous through suppression, extermination, or assimilation is not society as Dewey might have imagined it, nor does it comprise a model that can be called education in any real sense. It is forced acculturation using the apparatus of education. Interestingly, the genesis of Canada's residential school system coincides historically with the emergence of the progressive education movement south of the border. The Mohawk Indian Residential School opened in Brantford in 1831, but it was in the latter half of the 19th century that the system took shape and the policy that drove it became apparent. After the Constitution Act of 1867, Canada formally adopted a policy of assimilation. And the Nicholas Flood Davin Report, issued 12 years later, declared in language that is still shocking today that, and here is a direct quote, "The aim of education is to destroy the Indian." Duncan Campbell Scott, Superintendent of Indian Affairs in the Canadian government from 1913 to 1932, spoke of the need, quote, "to get rid of the Indian problem." Continuing the process of acculturation, he said, "until there is not a single Indian in Canada that has not been absorbed into the body politic, and there is no Indian question and no Indian department." In 1920, Scott drafted an amendment to the Indian Act, making it mandatory for all Native children between 7 and 15 to attend school, attendance at residential schools becoming compulsory. So this curious contrast shows that even where there is a consensus that education has the power to shape society, it does not follow that the inevitable outcome of education will be democracy, enlightenment, and the realization of human potential. You have to work at these things, and you have to, as Adil suggested, bring your scientist's mind to bear on received wisdom all around you. If our country is to right the wrong caused by the residential school system and evolve as it should, education must be returned to its Dewey-esque purpose, and it must become actively engaged in social reform. It must work to bring us all into what might be called a commonwealth of knowledge, rich and complex, admitting diverse perspectives and epistemologies, because of the infinite richness of our world and the complexity of society. It is little wonder that so many of the calls to action in the 2015 report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada directly address education. 6 seek to redress the immediate legacy of the residential schools by reforming the funding and administration of education for Indigenous young people and counteracting the alienation of students from their heritage. Many others address the need to educate non-Indigenous Canadians about Indigenous issues, especially those in public roles, those like yourselves whose own education, whether they know it or not, gives them power to shape the way we think about the world and our society. Thus, doctors, nurses, journalists, lawyers are all enjoined to acquire the intercultural competency to make them active agents of a new Canada, founded not on exclusivity, coercion, and force, but on inclusivity. As Indigenous educator Roberta Jameson recently noted in the Toronto Star, to make reconciliation work, non-Indigenous Canadians will have to invest time. It is a scandal that for nearly a century, our country has turned education to the diabolical purpose of destroying the Indian. For all who cherish their work as educators, This is cause for indignation, great grief, and regret. But today, with all of you gathered here, is a moment of great promise. You have been nurtured at McMaster in a tradition of progressive education. You've acquired not just the information necessary to perform a particular task valuable to our economy, but knowledge, wisdom, and the analytical capacity derived more broadly from our communal life and therefore potentially transformative of our society. Graduates, the point of celebrating your success as we have done today is to underline the extent to which your individual achievements are also social achievements. This is a communal event because the meaning, the quality, and the richness of our life together on this planet is ultimately the point of education. For that reason, this physical place is highly significant. It is literally the ground of our coming together and the emblem of our deeper commonality, kinship, and shared aspirations. If you look around at the flags and the garments worn here on stage, you'll see we have decorated it with the iconography of a culture many of us share. Yet our obligation as educators must be to grow in dialogue with other iconographies and histories, not blindly, indiscriminately, or sentimentally, but as thinking, feeling, complete human beings. Education, like science, thrives on the sheer abundance of our existence. I will end where at future convocations I intend us to start, by recognizing and acknowledging that we meet on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations, and within the lands protected by the dish with one spoon wampum agreement. To say that is to acknowledge a debt to those who were here before us, and also to speak against those teachers, clerical and secular, whose project over nearly a century was to alienate peoples from their history and culture, and to make of the educational process the very antithesis of what it ought to have been. I could not be more proud to stand with you all in this meeting place, pondering just what, moving on from here, you will all be able to do with our society and with our world. My very best wishes. Thank you.
Congratulations to the class of 2016. As Dr. Minton eloquently said, you're all now graduates and members of a wonderful group of alumni. And as a fellow alumna, I'm very much looking forward to seeing where you all go from here. Dr. Manning, congratulations on your accomplishments. I must say it's also a pleasure to realize that despite all of Dr. Manning's degrees, this is the first one he's actually been present to accept. And it seems to be very appropriate that it be at McMaster where he got himself launched on a career, and from the basis of his learning here, on a career that has taken him so far in contributing to society, and I wish the same to all of you. Dr. Dean, you've given us a lot to think about, and I encourage you to reflect upon his comments over time, and particularly the value of education and the possibility of it being used destructively, not something that we naturally think about. I'm also just going to reflect on it a bit as an alumna, and all of you are graduating, as was said, with very specific skills, and that, to a large extent, is what society expects of us. But as your valedictorian so carefully pointed out, and which I, as a longtime graduate, will testify to, it won't be long before you forget any specific thing you learned. But what you will know and what you will understand is what you learned here provides the foundation on which you build the rest of your life and the knowledge base that you will accumulate. But more importantly, is what you can do with an inquiring mind and critical thinking skills that takes you forward in a professional manner. But I also want to just come back and touch upon the point that Dr. Dean made about the society. When I came here many years ago to a much less diverse university, it still took me out of a very comfortable cocoon, and I met people I would never have met if I'd stayed at home. I came across ideas and discussed ideas in a very safe environment that I had never been exposed to before. And what I learned is you have to consistently push your comfort zone, and you have a very wide comfort zone when you're prepared to sit back and listen to the ideas around you and to talk to the people around you. And it's allowed me to move forward in a Canada that has become incredibly diverse and allow you to do the same thing. But hopefully what it will also do is avoid some of the intolerance that we've seen, with Orlando being an incredible example of the worst of it, right? To create a society that is inclusive. And so as a fellow alumni, my challenge to you is to remember President Dean's words and to recognize that alumni, you have a role to play in ensuring that the kind of education I got, the kind of experience you got, will be available to future generations. On that note, I realize that you all have pictures to take and parties to go to, and so all I can do is wish all of you the best in your future endeavors. Now I get to do a couple of housekeeping items for you. So, first of all, immediately following Convocation, a reception will be held for the science graduates and their guests in Hamilton Convention Center, Wentworth Rooms B and C. Flowers that have been delivered for graduates will be available at the coat check in the main lobby. I would ask that you please remain standing at your seats until the academic procession and the graduates have left the hall. Finally, please join now in the singing of our national anthem. After the singing of the anthem, this convocation stands adjourned.